Number 15, write down all the questions you have for your professor. ¿Qué fue eso? Oh, Jesus. Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. My name is Dany Acosta, and today we're going to be talking about our Sweet 16 tips to taking effective notes in college or university. And just want to let you know, make sure you smash that subscribe button, you get a like on this video, and hit that notification bell so you can receive all of our brand new Envision Series workshop videos. The first few tips are going to be just camera like this, where I am right now. And then I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm doing on a Word document for my notes. Number one, you want to make sure you're sitting in front row of the class because there might be a lot of noise. And as somebody who is visually impaired or completely blind, you may not be able to hear clearly over all the sound that the voice of the professor may have to travel through all of the students in your class. So you want to make sure that you're sitting in the front row and that you have JAWS completely turned on. Number two, another thing you want to make sure is that you think while you're taking notes, meaning, yes, you are going to have to process a lot of what the professor is saying, but because I'm going to show you how to keep your notes very short and concise, you want to make sure that you don't turn off JAWS. There's a way to mute JAWS without having to turn JAWS completely off. And that key command would be caps lock spacebar and then S. Caps lock spacebar S. That will turn off temporarily JAWS without having to turn him off completely. And that way, when you do need him, you can just do caps lock spacebar S again, and that will turn him back on. What this does, it allows you to check the time without having to completely turn off JAWS, but it won't have to read everything that is on your Word document. That way you can do some things, but it won't get it or interfere with all the note taking you're doing. Number three, paper, digital, or audio recording. Yes, there are some professors that completely feel comfortable with you taking audio recording notes, but my suggestion to you, if you're okay with it and if you feel comfortable, I know I do personally, is that you want to make sure you take great notes in class so you don't have to re-listen to a whole lecture through an audio recording. Some people, that's what works best for them. But for me personally, what works best for me is to make sure that I take the best notes possible through a laptop on a Word document, not through Braille, because I personally am not the greatest Braille typer or Braille reader. I can do it, but Word document works best for me. Number four, keep your class folders organized. This will work well so that when you have to go back and do a test, you don't have to look through one whole Word document of notes. You can literally look through each folder, and each folder should have at least one document specifically just for class notes. Number five, prepare. That means you have to prepare by reading your notes, your PowerPoint notes, or your textbook ahead of time, because a lot of the stuff that you're going to read is going to be talked about in class, especially when it's being written out in the syllabus. So you want to make sure that you're prepared. You also want to make sure that you have the class notes open on the Word document in your laptop. So let's say, for example, that I'm going to be going to English 101 this morning. So I wake up, before I even leave my house, I open up that document because we never know how traffic's going to be. I open up that document. So when I get to class, immediately when I open up my laptop, guess what's ready? My Word document. And because I already have my headphones connected, I am ready to take notes. Number six, avoid distractions like music, social media, and other notifications. It is very tempting to check your Facebook, to check your Twitter, to check your Instagram, and all this other stuff, to listen to music in very low volume. Sometimes, I know some people do it. I know I've done it in the past. Sometimes we take advantage that we have to use a screen reader and that we have to use headphones. But my encouragement to all of you is make sure you're hyper-focused in class. You have to be focused. You're paying thousands of dollars just to be there. Get your money's worth. Make sure you ask questions. Make sure you're engaging in class. That way, you can have the most effective experience while taking notes. Number 7, avoid typos. I cannot stress this enough. There will be so many times where you will have typos. And when you go back during a midterm or an exam, a final, you're gonna be like, oh man, what was I trying to say there? Sometimes it's one word and that's fine. But when it's line after line after line of gibberish, it's like, oh man, I should have been checking. Something I like to do is I will unmute JAWS. So I will do caps lock spacebar S. I will unmute JAWS temporarily. I will see my last 3 lines while the professor is changing slides or anything like that. Or maybe somebody's asking a question that I already know the answer to. I will check my last 3 lines and then I'll mute JAWS again, just so that I'm aware whether or not I'm making typos. Now that you guys can see my screen, I have my Word document open. And as you can see, right at the top, it says English notes, right? So let's pretend this is my English class. And we have a date here. Right under that, it says July 30th notes. This is just a pretend document, right? But because I know I'm in my next class, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do Control End will take me all the way to the bottom of the page. So Control End, it says bottom of file. Once I know I'm at the bottom of the file, I'm gonna do Control Enter, which will do a page break. It will throw me to the top of the next page. Control Enter. And then I'm gonna put today's date, right? So today's date is, okay, September 13. And then we're gonna put notes. So the top of my page is going to be titled September 13 Notes. This is something you want to do immediately when you open your laptop. You want to do this immediately because what happens is if you don't do it, you're going to be scattering around forever trying to find where did I start my notes for that specific day, right? So that's what you want to do. So let's continue with our note taking. Number 8, keep notes short. This is very important because what you want to end up doing is read as little as possible through your notes. The reason I say this is because somebody tries to type everything the professor is saying. And guys, let me tell you, it is not worth it. It's a waste of time. It's like trying to copy and paste all of your textbook into a Word document and read it and read it and read it and have to type it and read it and type it and read it and type it. You only want to type the highlights. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But let's go to number 9. Number 9 is fairly simple, is continually put your notes by either headings or other means that work for you. So for example, let's say today we're in a suicide class or a suicide class, okay? And let's say this is my suicide class notes, okay? Because I know that we're going to be talking about different things within suicide, let's say, okay, the professor starts off by saying, so today we're going to talk about grief, okay? So what I'll do is I'll do one comma, space bar, and type in grief. What this does is that it allows JAWS to read one grief because it doesn't pronounce the comma. If I were to do it in a list format, it'll say heading 1, number 1, grief, okay? And it'll take forever for JAWS to read that. I like it to be simple and quick and easy and for JAWS to not pronounce as much as it wants to. So let's say I'm typing notes. So let's say A, B, C. Okay. But then let's say the professor wants to talk about sense of belongingness. So let's say I do 2, comma, space, sense of belongingness. Okay. Now I know that when I go to this, I can actually look for it. So 1 and 2 are serving as my headings, okay, rather than doing headings, but I can also do lists. So you might be thinking, well, Danny, what if I wanted to do a list under those headings? You can still do that. So let's say I do A, notes, B, notes, C, notes. So I still have a way to do my notes and still keep headings without actually having to use headings. Number 10, use abbreviations. So for example, in my suicide class, right, we had to talk a lot about social work. This was a social work major class, okay? So what was a word that I was going to hear a lot? Social work. So instead of typing social work, okay, I just type SW capital. Because if I type it lowercase, guess what? I'm going to get that typo. And JAWS is going to go, incorrect spelling, SW. And I don't want that. I just want to hear SW. So I have to capitalize it. Okay. Boom. You hear that? That was Josh saying, good job. You just fixed it. Number 11, focus on main points. If you read your textbooks and you read the syllabus, you will have a better idea of what will be talked about in class. Sometimes there will be people who will ask questions that will be super completely out of your notes. For example, oh, professor, well, there was this one time that this happened in my agency and blah, 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 blah. What do you think about that? That's not going to relate so much to your notes. That's not going to be in the test. For example, there's not going to be a test question that said, what did Maggie say in September, blah, 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 about? That's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of times where the professor is going to say, this is going to be on the test. Number 12, use visual emphasis. Now, obviously, for people who are visually impaired or blind, some of them can use it. For example, contrast. But what about those that are completely blind? Use a star. Use a star. So, for example, star is shift 8. Star. Okay, shift 8. And then I write, maybe I can say something like blind. Blind is defined as not having any sight. Not having any sight, okay? Or vision, right? Or vision. Well, guess what? If I know this is extremely important because either I know so or the professor said so, later on when I look through my notes, I can do Control F. Okay, and I'm going to do it right here. Control F. Control F. Navigation, search, and I'm going to type in Shift 8, right, for star. Left there, star, space, star. I'm going to do enter. And guess what? All of the stars in my notes, later on, I'm going to be able to find them because I know that I'm going to need them either for an exam, for my final, maybe even for an essay. I'll be able to find them all because I do that. Or let's say the test says something like, or the study list, maybe you have the term, let's say suicidal ideation, okay? Or suicide ideation. Well, what if the professor gave me a definition? Or I have the textbook in a Word document. Well, all I have to do is Control F, type in suicide ideation, and then I can look through all the suicide ideation results in the Word document. And boom, faster way to find everything that I'm looking for. Number 13, highlight key points. This is another one that's going to really, really help you out. And I talked a little bit about it, but you want to make sure that you connect it. Don't scatter your notes everywhere. Always make sure you're at the bottom of the page every time you're taking a note, except for one of the following that I'll mention in a bit. You want to make sure that you're not scattering your notes all over the place and that you highlight the key points. If you're talking about suicide ideation, make sure you take notes on suicide ideation. You don't have to take notes on little stories all the time. Like a lot of these you'll retain through memory because they're going to impact you, but you don't have to take notes on them. I would say, I would even dare say, out of all the notes I've ever took in university, I would say maybe, especially in the beginning, maybe I only used probably about 40 to 35% of all my notes. Don't depend just on lectures in class. Don't depend just on PowerPoints. You have to go to class. You have to take effective notes, but keep it simple. Number 14, use your syllabus and your notes to make it effective. So I'll give you guys an example. As you guys saw, I did Control Enter, right? That did a page break. And the top of my page now says September 13 notes. Well, guess what? If I'm in the syllabus and I know that I'm doing a quiz from weeks 1 through 4, and I look at weeks 1 through 4 on my syllabus, and one of them is September 13, I'm going to go to my notes in September 13 and study those notes so I can get a good idea of what to look for. And I can go to the textbook and get a good idea of what the professor is looking for based on my notes and based on the syllabus. This will be very helpful to minimize the time that you take to study and maximize the potential and effectiveness of your notes. Number 15, write down all the questions you have for your professor at the end. This is really important because what ends up happening is that during class, you're going to have a lot of questions and you don't want to be a bother, especially if you're like me. Every now and then when you ask a question, it feels good. But there's always those questions that you're going to feel like, oh man, like, I don't know, maybe I should wait till the end of class, because as visually impaired or blind people, we tend to ask more questions because a lot of visuals on a projector or on a PowerPoint, maybe a video that they're showing, maybe an image, may not transcend the same way to us, especially when we don't have those notes ahead of time. So you want to write those notes at the end of your note document. And then at the end of class, you can stay a little behind and then ask your professor, hey, professor, I have a few questions about our lecture today. And then you can ask them. The only thing you have to remember is when you write a question, make sure you go above it, right? Let's say you have a list of 3 questions. Make sure you go above those 3 and continue taking notes, okay? That way you can ask those questions at the end. Number 16, the last one. Every time you're about to leave a class, never, ever, 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 ever leave your class without making sure that you've opened the Word document to your next class, ready to take amazing notes. Well, that's it, guys. That's all we have for today. I just want to thank you all, and especially to all of those that were able to donate to my GoFundMe campaign. For those of you that don't know, I do have a GoFundMe campaign down in the description below where I am raising funds to do my master's in social work. If you want to continue to donate, or if you want to share, maybe you say, Dany, I don't have the funds, but I want to share your campaign. Please go to the link down below in the description. Share with your family, with your friends, with your pets, with your neighbors' pets if you have to, because guys, I believe that my master's in social work will continue to empower our communities and help me leave an impact by advocating for people with, without disabilities, and those who are immigrants. Well, that's it, guys. God bless you all. I love you all very much. And remember to envision inspiration. Peace. Thank you.